Ladies and gentlemen, this is your tactician, Mr. G Coalition, brother number 17, looking fresh, staying clean, back in the mix to discuss more professional wrestling. We are 3 hours as of the time that I'm talking right now. By the time I upload this, the show will have probably already started. We're talking about SummerSlam is the next event that's on the table. Now, last time I came on and did a video, it was not about SummerSlam. It was not about anything. Let's just put it like this. We weren't in the SummerSlam season yet, and the topic that I was on was about Def Rebel and CFOs and the whole music issue. Sorry, got something in my throat. With regards to WWE. And I did promise that I would work on videos involving theme music and what could be done to make each theme song feel and look more complete. Not each. Certain theme songs from both CFOs and Def Rebel. And if a Jim Johnston song comes along that occasionally I feel the need to do something with, then I'll go with that too. But right now, I recently ran into a remix of one of Finn Bálor's, not one of Finn Bálor's themes, I'm going to say of both of Finn Bálor's themes, Catch Your Breath and I Am Danger, because I Am Danger was a rearrange of Catch Your Breath. So Def Rebel did by I Am Danger was a rearrange of CFO's Catch Your Breath, which is Finn Bálor's original WWE theme, made specifically for his Judgment Day era. And Judgment Day is going to be a key part of this video right here. But first, I want to kind of segue from that to this by saying I found a YouTuber who did a remix of Finn Bálor's theme music mixed with the Judgment Day song theme by Alter Bridge, which fits perfectly into okay, this is the ideal Finn Bálor theme over both versions, over both I Am Danger and Catch Your Breath. This should be Finn Bálor's theme at some point, I feel like. And I'm going to end up addressing that in a video. That's going to end up being one of my subjects here. I'm going to actually introduce, first off, there's stuff that, even with that theme, there's something that needs to be arranged. Let me first of all tell you exactly whose theme it is. It's a guy called by the name of Steve Anderson, a former military guy who's suffering from PTSD due to some issues that have gone down through his past in the military. And one of his projects was called The Beautiful Distortion, which I don't know if it's the story is about this lady called Miranda Chase who, like Stephen himself and a whole bunch of other different soldiers, was traumatized by their experience during their deployment in the Middle East about 15, 20 years ago, whether we're talking about Iraq, Afghanistan, and things of that nature, and involving some of the cruel tactics and some of the cruel things that their fellow troops were doing or that they had witnessed that left them traumatized and they couldn't talk about it and ended up in some cases, many cases, 22 cases a day, ended up taking themselves out. Let me just leave it like that. Because they couldn't handle the stresses of everything, the trauma from what they've experienced and stresses that were put on their minds because of all of it, what they felt they could have done better or they could have done worse, or how they suffered this or didn't suffer that or this, that, or the third. There were so many issues with this. Now, here's the reason this is even halfway relevant is because, one, I want to actually give a shout out to this artist before I go on and use his work in one of these videos. The second reason I want to establish it is because there is one of the compositions in his Beautiful Distortion project actually has the pieces that I would need to actually turn that Finn Bálor music that Finn Bálor remix that he created, and I would say, okay, the little things that need to be done to where I can imagine this as an actual entrance theme that a wrestler would walk out to, the little things that need to be fixed for that, his work in this project over here can literally be used to fill in the gaps for that Finn Bálor theme. And I especially want to give him that shout out because this brother this man he's a creator. He's doing his best to be a creative head, or to do some type of creative stuff with music, because this is the thing that he loves to do, and this is the thing that he's able to let out, to use as a creative outlet for his ideas and his memories, his pains, his hopes, and all of that stuff. And this is like, I wanted to give that dude a little bit of a shout out, a little bit of a tribute, a little bit of respect right here before moving forward. And because because the song that I'm talking about is Finn Bálor and the Judgment Day, that makes it a perfect segue to what I'm actually going to aim to talk about right now. And that is the fact, the main topic here. Rhea Ripley and CM Punk cannot win their matches tonight at SummerSlam, for the simple reason that the storylines involving them have not done enough. Or should I say, not even not done enough. Let me rephrase. The storylines involving both Rhea Ripley and CM Punk, and if you want to throw in Damian Priest as well, but his heel isn't a part of the problem here. So that's why I don't say him. In fact, I would actually prefer Priest winning. But my picks, in order for these storylines to truly make sense, are that Rhea Ripley and CM Punk, specifically, cannot win their matches at SummerSlam. In order for the stories to make sense from a moral babyface versus heel standpoint, and actually have the heels be worse than the babyfaces, that process, in order to actually rectify these stories and make them go correctly, has to happen through Liv Morgan beating Rhea Ripley and Drew McIntyre beating CM Punk tonight, and them continuing to do Rhea and Punk and Damian Priest, because again, Priest's part in this doesn't involve his SummerSlam opponent. In fact, his SummerSlam opponent, Gunther, the Ring General, all respect to him. He's an absolute boss. He's a beast in the ring. He carries himself like a true menacing, imposing, imperial final boss type of character. And in any other period of time where there is nothing, in any other period of time where I could say that these stories over here ain't cooking to such a level that it would make him look like an afterthought in terms of what he's doing in comparison to what they're doing, in any other time I would say, you know what? Let Gunther run with the world championship. I still believe that time is coming. I still believe that he is worthy of being a world heavyweight champion. I still believe that he will get there. The Intercontinental Championship run that he just had, the longest IC title run of all time, going to be the stuff of legends, if not already there. So I'm not knocking Gunther as a performer. I'm not knocking Walter Hahn as a person when I say this ain't his time yet. I'm saying that for the stories and for what is going on Monday Night Raw, and to legitimize and to give the most credibility and the most character, attention, and importance to material involving that World Heavyweight Championship that Damian Priest is currently holding on his shoulder, Gunther should not beat Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship. Simply put, Priest is part of the top story on the show, as is Rhea. CM Punk, part of the close enough, he's basically kind of interjected into the top story, but he's in the second top story, nonetheless. Basically, the two top stories kind of intermixed together whenever Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre ended up meeting for the world title. And so CM Punk is mainly a part of one, but kind of a part of both. Priest, other way around. He's mainly part of the whole story about all the Judgment Day intrigue. But the main point that I'm actually trying to hit on is this. If I can be as concise as possible, because I'm freaking trailed on to so many different places already. And this is the thing that's got me like kind of hesitating on making my videos, because like I tend to run on multiple different points without like fully closing one into the other, because a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking about kind of blends into each other. But in this case, The main idea that I need to get across, the villains, or should I say, the heels are not appropriately positioned as the characters positioned as the heels are not appropriately portrayed as the villains at this point. SummerSlam and the way that SummerSlam is executed will be key in determining whether that will be rectified going forward, whether that was the plan to do it right going forward. Drew McIntyre has more in common with Rhea Ripley in this situation. Drew McIntyre being the heel in his feud with CM Punk. Rhea Ripley being positioned as the face in her feud with Liv Morgan. Yet, in this situation, we have two different storylines that ultimately have a common point. One person injures person A, injures person B, and is completely remorseless about it. Person B comes back to get revenge on person A and uses very shady and dishonorable tactics in the name of this revenge. However, in one storyline, person A is positioned as the hero, person B is positioned as the villain. In the other storyline, person B is positioned as the hero, the babyface, person A is positioned as the heel. Drew McIntyre, the heel of his story, has more in common with Rhea Ripley, the face of her story, in the sense of this was the person that did the initial injuring in the first place. Liv Morgan, who is the heel in her story, has more in common with CM Punk, who is the babyface in his. And this is where the problem really begins. Drew McIntyre recently admitted that when he injured CM Punk, he wasn't really trying. He was just trying to rough him up and to make sure he didn't win the Royal Rumble match. Rhea Ripley intentionally blindside attacked Liv Morgan before the match that they were supposed to have last year that instead turned into the vicious assault that we saw, stomping, pilmanizing her freaking shoulder multiple times while taunting her and saying, I told you to stay out of my business. You're nothing to me. You're dead to me. Mind you, Rhea and Liv had already had a history prior to even this happening in the first place. They used to be tag team partners for a minute until Rhea cold-heartedly betrayed Liv and then basically called her a disappointment and accused her of dragging her down. And then, it was revealed that Edge was the one who talked her into it in order to begin the Judgment Day with her, Priest, and Edge, obviously. And their first feuds were against AJ Styles for Edge, Finn Bálor for Damian Priest, and Liv Morgan, of course, for Rhea Ripley. And it ended up where Styles and Bálor ended up linking up for the first time, the former Bullet Club leaders, the first former true Bullet Club leaders, or should I say, the first pioneer and the first ace of Bullet Club, for AJ Styles and Prince Devitt, Finn Bálor, finally linking up in WWE for the first time, and Liv Morgan was added to their alliance due to common enemies with the Judgment Day. Of course, the Judgment Day won the feud. Finn ended up ended up joining the Judgment Day while convincing Priest and Ripley to turn against Edge. And then everything developed with them feuding with Rey and Dominic Mysterio. Rhea pretty much BDSMing Dom into, by attacking him by basically choking Dominic into submission, getting him to turn against his father. Dom becoming the hated brat, dirty Dom, the most hated dude the most properly hated dude in this business today. I say properly hated because I mean hated as in his heel character. You cannot say a word in edgewise without getting booed 95% of the time. Without getting booed out the building, I should say. Now, all of that together, Liv and Rhea, they had a history. They used to be partners. Rhea betrayed her. They were enemies. And then Liv eventually goes to SmackDown, cashing in on Ronda Rousey with Money in the Bank to become the Women's Champion. Ends up becoming tag team champions with Raquel Rodriguez, another former friend of Rhea Ripley's, who, contrary to what some mommy simps have been spraying on Twitter, Raquel never betrayed Rhea. They're good friends in real life. All of these people are good friends in real life. And their team up was at house shows. When they finally interacted on the NXT television program proper, it was when Raquel, I believe, was the NXT Women's Champion, and Rhea was trying to get that title back. And so they ended up interacting with each other, and they referenced their real life friendship and their past team ups at house shows as a thing to kind of crystallize how they're familiar with each other, how they know each other. And I think maybe because Raquel was teaming with Dakota Kai at the time, they did a little bit of thing about how Raquel had changed or something like that. But it was never an active, they were allies on screen and one betrayed the other. That was never a thing. So if the people trying to use, Raquel betrayed Rhea to say that, this justifies Rhea's trust issues even more than the fact that Nikki Cross turned her back on her, guess what? No, it doesn't. Not only does it not do that, Liv Morgan has been betrayed in the past also by Ruby Soho with the Riot Squad. Now, yeah, Ruby ended up, taking it back and apologizing because I was upset and I was jealous of the fact that my partner didn't need me. Like, that was the story. But then shortly after that, they ended up disbanding anyway because Ruby ended up being fired from WWE. Again, was it again? Or was it just Sarah who was released the first time? And then Ruby stuck around and then she got released. I'm trying to figure it out. But the point is, there wasn't a thing where like Rhea has been betrayed like 13 times. So she developed trust issues. Well, Liv doesn't know what the first thing about that is. No. Liv has been betrayed once on WWE product. Rhea has been betrayed once on WWE product. I'm talking about prior to their team up. So they would have equally developed the same kind of trust issues. So why is it that when Liv gets pinned, she doesn't get upset and start yelling at Rhea about how you weren't there for me and this, that, and the third. But the second Rhea gets pinned, she's all over Liv. And she's screaming at her. And then Liv tries to freaking calm down the argument. But instead, Rhea decides to pummel her from behind, beat the shit out of her, and hit her with a riptide, and then calls her dead weight a week later. And this is why they're feuding. This is why they started feuding in the first place. Let's not forget that detail. That's how that started. But I'm going back into the weeds here in order to kind of portray the picture. It's always been Rhea who's been in the wrong. It's always been Rhea who's been the bully. It's always been Rhea who's been the aggressor in this whole thing from 2022 to 2023. And WWE portrayed it that way perfectly because that was the role. Rhea was meant to be the heel from that point. So Rhea was the one. She was the traitor. She was the aggressor. She was the bully. She was the tormentor. She was the one who, in 2023, in 2023, when she's freaking bullying around Natalya and Liv and Raquel come out to stop it because they have mutual respect for Natalya and Liv is not a fan of freaking allowing Rhea to run around and do whatever the fuck she wants to people because of how she tried to do it to her. All of a sudden, Rhea's coming out the following week, interrupting their interview on commentary to try to intimidate them and tell them that this is the second time you guys got in my business. Meanwhile, it's not. It's actually the first time, the only time that they came out to interrupt her while she was in the process of freaking doing something with somebody. Without reason. The closest thing to a first time would be like she had a little bit of a promo in the ring with Bianca Belair, and as they were already done, and as she was leaving, Liv and Raquel came out to be Bianca's tag team partners in a match. And they ended up crossing by Rhea. They ended up crossing paths, and Raquel was kind of eyeing up her title. But they never really did anything with that. That was it, from what I remember. So basically, the quote-unquote first time, if Rhea wanted to say that was the second time that they got in her business, and she warned them that there was going to be danger when there was a strike free, the first time was literally them just crossing paths. If she wants to say that them saving Natalya from her was the second time, the first time was literally them crossing paths. But here's where it gets egregious. Liv and Raquel both stood tall on it. First off, it's 2-on-1. Second off, I don't think either one of them was in the mood to be bullied around by this chick again. Because again, they both know her. And Liv was actively betrayed by her. So they were both like, nah, we ain't doing this. You're not going to intimidate us. We're not scared of you. And if you keep on doing this and type of bullying around the division, thinking you run everything and everybody's got to bow down to you, we're going to come out again and again and again. And yeah, okay, they said they were going to come out again and again. They said, and we'll stop you. They said that. Okay, I get it. I get it from the standpoint of, okay, the villain does not like to be stopped from doing what she's doing to people. She's going to, and it's like, you guys have made it abundantly clear that you intend to keep getting involved in that. But here's the problem. She's over here insisting to this day, both on social media and on TV, as we saw last week on Raw, that she gave them multiple warnings, that she gave Liv multiple warnings to stay out of her business. No, she didn't. She gave them one warning after one time that they crossed her. One time she tried to intimidate them and say, and in the process of doing so, she lied that they interfered in her business twice, when it was just once. And the only thing you could point to as a quote-unquote first time was literally them crossing paths as she was finished dealing with somebody that they were about to team with. So literally, y'all crossed paths, and then they stopped your bullying once, and you say that that's a second time that they butted into your business, and you're warning them about a strike 3. Now, because they react with defiance instead of being intimidated by the bully, she comes back the next week and interrupts another interview of theirs, and this time attacks Raquel Rodriguez right before she and Liv are about to go for their titles, and basically takes out Raquel, which results in Liv having to freaking go it alone, and they lose their tag team championships. That wasn't a warning. There was no warning before this so-called strike 3. You just jumped straight to strike 3 after crossing paths once, actually stopping your bullying once, and telling you to your face that they're not afraid to stop you from continuing to bully their friends. But you don't even actually wait for them to actually stop you again. No, you just go straight after them. It was literally strike 1, and you didn't wait for strike 3. You didn't even actually have strike 2. You got strike 1 and some change before you went and tried to destroy them. You didn't give multiple warnings. You gave one warning. But this is me like looking at the character and consistency of all this shit, which is exactly where I'm going here. So because she injured Raquel and cost her and Liv the titles, now Liv wants to attack. Now Liv is like straight up, no, I'm coming after you. And yeah, she comes after her. And this leads to a match being set up, and that's where Rhea does the blindside attack that tears Liv's shoulder out of socket. In real life, Liv was already injured. This was her being written off the program. But it was also like the perfect setup for the current story of the Liv Morgan Revenge Tour. Where I run into the problem is that here in 2024, because Rhea Ripley is getting a positive reception, she's become like too cool to boo. So she's effectively going to be turned into a babyface. Because of this, Liv Morgan is obviously positioned as the heel in her story. And the stuff that she has been doing with the Judgment Day has been absolutely fucking brilliant work, if I may say so for myself. Mainly, and part of it is, look, it takes, because this whole storyline actually kicks off a bunch of different gaps for me in terms of like storytelling over the past few years. I'm a fan of factions, so I like booking around a key notable faction. And the fact that the Judgment Day has actually rise to that level, and it's not just me, because look, the Bloodline thing has been carrying WWE for the past 4 freaking years to the point where the word cinema is constantly used to describe WWE storylines now because of how it was used to describe the Bloodline. And I have thoughts about the whole Bloodline thing that I could get onto in another future video. But right now, I'm just trying to focus on the Judgment Day because they've now taken up that mantle. And and speaking of which, you've also now included the romance aspect because part of Liv's quote unquote revenge tour, where she says she's going to take everything away from Rhea Ripley and pay back for what Rhea's done to her. Part of what she's doing, obviously, is she's trying to seduce Dominic and lure the Judgment Day faction all to betray Rhea and join her side. And I say trying, I actually mean to add that in quotation marks because I'm actually of the mind and of the belief that WWE has thrown us enough zingers, enough little wrinkles in there to kind of suggest that she's been got to Dominic. She's been got in cahoots with Finn Bálor. She's been in league with everybody in the Judgment Day except for Damian Priest. And everything that they're doing now is just part of like slowly rolling it out just in time in order to position Rhea Ripley and Priest as well. But I don't think with Priest it either will or should be triggered against him at SummerSlam. With Rhea, it absolutely should. Right? In perfect position for Rhea to come in, try to fight Liv and take her title back, and that's when the dominoes start to fall, with her being the first to go down. But the whole time we're talking about it, Liv is pointing out things about Rhea and her character that absolutely make it to where like it's real difficult for people to sympathize with her, that are actually looking at the story from a common sense standpoint. Rhea and her relationship with Dominic Mysterio has been the one wearing the pants, has been the obvious head of that relationship, to the point where Dom is basically treated as her little bitch. Which is the joke that they literally just made canon this past week. Like, he's the simp, he's the underling, he's the dude who basically, he's her cleanup boy. She's lifting him up. She's making him do her dirty work. And he's freaking winning championships. If he ever loses a championship that he just won, specifically like the NXT North American Championship when he had beaten Trick Williams for it, guess what happens? She's over here threatening him on Monday Night Raw and saying, you better take that title back right now or else don't even bother coming back home to me. That's Rhea. That's who we're talking about. So, a character that enjoys domination and control of all situations, to the point where right or wrong doesn't even matter to a character like Rhea Ripley. Now, yes, a character like that can still be rooted for, but when we're talking about a situation where the person that she has directly hurt is now doing things to take vengeance upon her, and I'm supposed to root against that person when they haven't crossed any lines that are worse than the stuff that she's done to her, that Rhea did to Liv, to stoke her vengeful hatred in the first place? Now, it's not to say that vengeance is good. This is actually what point I'm trying to get to. I want Liv to actually be able to do something that crosses way over the fucking line and actually hurts Rhea a lot worse than, actually maybe not a lot worse, but I want her to actually get to the point where she's hurting Rhea worse than Rhea has ever hurt her, or she's at least trying to hurt Rhea way worse than Rhea has ever hurt her, and it becomes so obvious that I wanted to get to that point. I want that story, the Liv Morgan story, to get to the point where she's obviously worse. I wanted to get there. And that's because I know that the plan is for Rhea to be the babyface, and she should be the babyface based on crowd reaction, but she's not the hero of this story. She's the villain being lionized because the other person isn't as cool as her. That's why I need this story to play out in the best way to make perfect sense, which is, of course, the whole Judgment Day conspiracy. It has to be Dominic betraying her and choosing Liv over her and saying he lied and he's this generation's Eddie Guerrero and he made Rhea think that she got control of him when he yelled at Liv and told her how he hated her and all this stuff. That was a lie. That was part of the plan. That was set up to make Rhea trust that she had Dominic under control, knowing that he was going to destroy her at SummerSlam. That has to be the play that's made here. Finn Bálor, also, he's the other part of the story when it comes to him and Priest. and the tension has been developing between him and Priest for the better part of a freaking year. And that story has to develop in that Priest and that Finn has been playing Priest to try to get the World Heavyweight title off of Priest and into either his hands or somebody else's hands within the Judgment Day who he actually likes and wants to continue, who actually likes and trusts by his side and wants to continue being around. Now, whether that is Finn himself or that's somebody else who he ends up bringing in, which is more on that in a minute. And this is why I say don't. This is the other part of why I say Gunther shouldn't win against Priest. But point is this: with Ripley, she shouldn't win. If she wins and Liv is all of a sudden, if she wins, guess what? We're talking about Rhea winning the title back, keeping the fans, keeping Dominic, and keeping the Judgment Day. That's completely unfair. That makes Liv look like a complete putz, a loser. That makes Dominic look like he truly is a bitch. That makes the Judgment Day look incompetent as fuck because they're supposed to be the main heels of this freaking show, but they're allowing a babyface to dominate them. And worse, it allows Rhea to keep being the worst aggressor in the story that is supposed to be her face turn. That's completely illogical from a moral standpoint. And it basically turns face and heel into a thing that doesn't really matter. This, in terms of like, why should people root for this person over this person? It doesn't matter at all. Now I get it. Cool heels are a thing. Most heels are effectively cool heels in the sense that like they're getting cheered and their entrances and stuff. And the only time that they're getting booed is when they're actually doing a dastardly heel shit. I get that. But at the very least, in order to keep that aspect at least alive, to where the dastardly heel things that someone does is good enough to get them booed, don't make the babyface actively be worse than the heel. Or don't let the babyface go on in a story and be actively worse than the heel that they're fighting. That's the thing that to me has me bugged about how is WWE going to fuck this up and allow Rhea to just take it all back and leave Liv back to square zero, basically. And we're still supposed to cheer for Rhea and see her as being the one in the right. Is that going to be what happens here? Or is Liv actually going to be allowed to humiliate Rhea, to break Rhea's heart by taking Dominic from her and keeping the championship, and eventually, and I say eventually as in within the next 2 to 6 weeks, taking her whole fucking faction from her? So that Rhea has to reflect on the shit that she's done and how Liv got to be where she is, got to be the kind of person that she is now because of the shit that Rhea did to her over the past couple of years to set her on that path. And that humbleness, that little bit of humility, that little bit of self-reflection doesn't have to go on forever. Just give me a couple of weeks of her realizing I created a monster. Give me that. And then give me Liv and the Judgment Day spitting in the face of that realization. For both Rhea and Damian Priest. Give me that. If you can give me that, she's the babyface. The true babyface in this story. Not because she was that way in the beginning, but in the end of it. She's the one who realized that this path was wrong. Give me that much, and I'll happily be like, okay, Rhea's the face. But as of right now, we ain't there yet. Liv has to win. Dominic has to turn. The Judgment Day has to turn in order for Rhea to truly be the face. If WWE is just going to have Rhea take the championship back like a month after she got hurt, a month after she got hurt, and her shoulder injury lasted about 3 months, not 6 to 8 like Morgan's. And yeah, okay, it was kayfabe attributed to Liv attacking her. And yeah, it was actually during Liv's attack that her shit, during Liv's attack backstage with the hilarious chair throw into the head, it was during that freaking Rhea's arm, which was already in bad shape, got aggravated to where she had to sit out. When she had to sit out time. She had to take time out to rehab. But again, we're talking about these girls are literally being written off by being attacked by each other in their legitimately bad arms. That's crazy to think about how much guts it takes for these ladies to agree to those segments, to where their bad arms are what's being attacked. Their already legitimately bad arms are what's being attacked in order to write them off TV. It's amazing that they went this far. So I'm not, again, everything I'm saying that Rhea's the bad one here, all this stuff I'm saying about how it's going to be fucked up if Rhea wins, that's not me knocking Rhea Ripley, the performer, or Demi Bennett, the person in real life, at all. Same way I can talk about going to the CM Punk storyline. I don't have nearly as much detail on that because it's not nearly as long. Drew McIntyre and CM Punk's issue started when Punk came back, and Drew and Seth Rollins were both like apoplectic about seeing his ass again. Now, how much of that was shoot and how much of that was work is still up for debate. But there's obviously elements of both in this. And the reason that Punk and Drew and probably a lot of other people, or at least a few other people, felt that way, Seth and Drew and several other people felt that way about Punk, is because Punk was an asshole by his own admission towards the end of his time in WWE. He remained an asshole during his 7 years away when it comes to his perspective on the wrestling business and into his time in AEW as well. The dude was constantly doing interviews where he would occasionally shit on the business, while at the same time professing that he either didn't love it, or he was out of it, or he was now just back to falling in love with it, but still had no respect for the product of its history, and was taking his indie friends and trying to elevate them to the level, his old indie friends, I should say, because a lot of them are probably no longer friends, and trying to elevate them with in terms of his word of mouth to like that level of the NWO and shit, when they hadn't even earned any of that distinction in terms of actually being able to maintain and contain and keep, to build and maintain like a high level audience, even by today's standards, let alone by the standards of 1996 to 2000 when it comes to the wrestling business. But the point is, Punk was not the best person to be around at all times. And there were a lot of people that had beef with him about that. Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins being two of those people. And they both openly, visibly could be seen in front of the people at Survivor Series, not taking well the fact that he was back. And so this was used for storyline fodder to give both Rollins and McIntyre eventually future feuds against Punk. Now, the McIntyre direction is the direction they ended up going hardcore in because of CM Punk getting injured, which was a running theme in AEW, and here we go, it happens again, at the Royal Rumble, off getting an elbow injury off the back of a Future Shock DDT that was hit by McIntyre. So immediately, and even though he was injured, he still fought through that match and ended up being the last man eliminated by Cody Rhodes, who won for the second time in a row, and as we saw, finished the story with the bloodline and the deposing of the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. A story which ironically brought Seth Rollins' visionary character back to true babyfacedom by him actually humbling himself and recognizing that his prior betrayal of Roman Reigns is part of the shit that set off who the tribal chief became. A realization that hasn't come close to hitting Rhea yet, which is exactly why I want Liv and Dominic and Judgment Day to embarrass her and Priest starting tonight, going on into the next month. Because that's what will trigger that in her for this current story. With Seth, this is actually the second time he's revisited the ill effects of what he did with the Shield after a babyface turn. The first time was with Ambrose, really, and this time is with Reigns, because this is when Reigns finally admitted that he's always hated the motherfucker. Character-wise, of course. They're all best friends in real life. I get it. But that's a segue from Rhodes and Rollins and Reigns. This is give another example of what I'm talking about here. With Punk, him and McIntyre's shit is basically backstage stuff, where McIntyre felt like he needed help that Punk didn't give him. And that's part of the reason why he got fired. Now, if you want to say, well, Drew's kind of being bitter about old shit that really didn't matter in the end anyway, because him being fired ended up being the best thing that ever happened to him, because it actually awakened his true warrior side, to where he's not relying on the Vince McMahon chosen one thing. He's actually being the chosen one of his own destiny. Yeah, that can easily be pointed out, but it hasn't been yet. And yet, here we are, because Punk and McIntyre haven't had enough time directly in front of each other for consecutive days or weeks or whatever yet, or to even go there. Where we are going is, I prayed for this and it happened. Those iconic words from Drew McIntyre. And the fact that he did end up, again, with the freaking, you're already hurt here, but we're going to stomp it a little bit more in order to write you out. Again with that, and yeah, you can say, okay, by the same standard that Rhea Ripley is the heel in her story, Drew McIntyre has to be the heel in his. And, of course, at WrestleMania, CM Punk screws Drew McIntyre out of the World Heavyweight Championship after Drew beat Seth Rollins for it, who was already kind of the walking wounded because of the tag team match with Cody against Roman and The Rock. Seth loses the title to Drew McIntyre. And Drew celebrates with the title, goes over to his wife, but then he sees CM Punk at the announce table. And he starts taunting him. He crawls up to him at the table and starts taunting him. Repeatedly for like a minute. And that's when Punk has enough. And even though he's still injured, he's still got one arm in a sling, he beats Drew's ass. And this allows Damian Priest, Mr. Money in the Bank, to cash in and take the World Heavyweight Championship. All well and good. He came at Punk. He was the one who injured Punk, and then he came up and taunted him. So that's all well and good. Here's where we run into a problem. I think either the Raw after Mania or the Raw after the Raw after Mania, McIntyre, I should say, has a number one contenders match against Jey Uso. Punk, not missing a beat, screws Drew again, this time completely unprovoked, hiding under the guise of a cameraman. And this is the part where I'm like, okay, hold on a second. What are we fucking doing here? Are we gonna, because Punk isn't fully cleared for a full match, at least not kayfabe-wise. So why are we going down the road of Punk repeatedly screwing Drew without Drew repeatedly provoking Punk? See, now you just had Punk screw Drew one more time than Drew actually provoked Punk. And then we're heading into Clash at the Castle, where we know Drew's going to get another title shot. And he does get another title shot in Scotland, in his home country. And everybody's telling me Punk's going to screw him again. Punk's going to screw him again. And I'm looking at this like, okay, he hasn't even been talking about Punk much in the build-up heading into this show. So if Punk is going to come back again and screw Punk again while still not being cleared for action again, we're now talking about 3 times in a row, twice unprovoked. At that point, the face and heel dynamic becomes inverted, especially since you're going to fucking do it in front of Drew's own home country in Scotland. And you're going to get booed to death. And the last time somebody flew across the ocean to screw somebody else out of a match involving a championship situation was when AJ Styles flew unprovoked, flew unscheduled. He didn't have a match at the Elimination Chamber Perk, yet he flew over there anyway, and he screwed LA Knight out of the Elimination Chamber. And this was treated as his official heel turn. That was the last time, the previous time that it happened, and that was the first time that it happened. And it was literally like 4 months before Clash at the Castle. Yet, just 4 months later, CM Punk is going to be the second guy to ever do this, and he still gets to be the babyface in his storyline? Right there, I'm starting to cry bullshit. I'm also starting to cry bullshit because Damian Priest is the guy who's close friends with Rhea Ripley, the one member of the Judgment Day who I didn't call is going to betray, who I said is not going to betray Rhea. He's the one member of the Judgment Day that's still cool with Rhea and is still going to be cool with Rhea going forward, who's not going to turn his back on her. And he's also the guy who's literally still the World Heavyweight Champion because of CM Punk. And he's getting help from CM Punk over and over again. And he's not saying a damn word to Punk about it. But the one time his own boys in the Judgment Day help him to beat Jey Uso, he got a problem with them. So right there, as soon as Clash at the Castle hits, and I see, okay, this problem has now completely reared its head with these storylines, being completely inconsistent on what makes you the good guy or the bad guy. So now I'm insulted at the idea that in one story, I'm supposed to treat the Avenger as the bad guy, and in the other story, I'm supposed to treat the original injurer as the bad guy. And Priest is directly benefiting off of the people that I'm supposed to treat as the good guys. So right there, I'm like, okay, I can't root for Punk, I can't root for Rhea, and I can't root for Priest. This is where I'm going here. I can't root for these characters because they're not the full, because the stories have not distinguished them as being morally better than the bad guys they're against. And the stories aren't even consistent as to what makes you the good guy or the bad guy. And yet, I'm supposed to listen to Priest talk down to his faction that he was supposedly all about the whole family aspect of the faction. But now, ever since he became the champion, he's talking like, oh, they don't need me, I need them. Oh, like, I don't need, or the other way around. They need me, I don't need them. I'm way better than them. And he's talking down to them about not getting things done. Meanwhile, he hasn't even won a single world title match clean yet. You have all the obvious, so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I don't blame Finn Bálor for wanting to get rid of your ass now. I don't blame Finn Bálor for wanting to get rid of your big ass. But Finn Balor's not his opponent at SummerSlam. Gunther is his opponent at SummerSlam. Gunther, the same guy who, after losing the iconic Intercontinental Championship run, has basically been either winning the King of the Ring or been on a sabbatical pretty much the entire lead up to his title match right now, tonight. So what's he really been doing? Who's he got lined up? Oh, who's he been teased to potentially be opponents with? Oh, Sheamus still has to try to fight him again and try to beat him again. Kaiser is his boy who's getting increasingly arrogant and up his own ass about how great he is. Eventually, that's going to lead to him and Gunther coming to blows. Oh, and by the way, Dragunov was one of the first people to ever beat Gunther in WWE, and he's now on the main roster, and they've started teasing that dynamic. So those are the matches. But here's the problem. Kaiser's injured and completely focused on Sheamus when he comes back anyway. Sheamus has been on a downward trajectory, and Dragunov is currently the guy who's being broken by disappointments. Or should I say, maybe not broken, who's constantly like fighting hard, but always coming up short in the Intercontinental situation right now with Sami Zayn and Braun Breaker. And by the way, if we really think about it, the Intercontinental Championship situation with Sami Zayn and Braun Breaker and Ilya Dragunov kind of being a third party against Braun, that's literally the three guys that have beaten Gunther one-on-one in WWE. And their situation is the Intercontinental Championship. So it's going to be hella wild looking at this man as the World Heavyweight Champion while the three people that beat him soon to become... Well, actually, let me not say that. I'm mixing up my statements here. It's going to be hella wild looking at Gunther as the World Heavyweight Champion at the time when the three people that ever beat him are fighting for the Intercontinental title. It's going to be hella wild with that. And that's part of why I think that he's not actually going to win. Because because there's no real set direction. There's no real set, okay, these are the rivals if Gunther wins the championship. Meanwhile, Priest already has another world title match lined up because his gentleman's agreement with Seth Rollins, he threw it out because of Punk's interference, even though he still has yet to actually confront Punk about his interference. But he threw out the gentleman's agreement with Rollins and said, you know what? No, I'll fight you again. I know what we agreed upon. that if I beat you at Money in the Bank, you don't get another shot. But I'm throwing that out because I didn't win clean, so you get another shot. So they're laying the groundwork for Priest to actually become an honest babyface, and it's done through Seth Rollins, the same Seth Rollins who because he got screwed too when the Money in the Bank screw job, and that's the third one that I need to get on. Damn, took me a hell of a segue to finally get here. The third, or should I say fourth, CM Punk screw job of Drew McIntyre. The third in an actual world title match. The fourth overall if you count the number one contender match that ended up with Priest fighting Jey Uso. But it's the fourth time that McIntyre got actively screwed by CM Punk after cashing in Money in the Bank to turn Priest versus Rollins into a three-way triple threat match. Punk gets involved, screws McIntyre, and directly is responsible for Priest beating Drew to retain the belt, which is also at Seth's expense now, because Seth is now, because of his gentleman's agreement with Priest, he can't get another title shot. And he's not even the one that got pinned. It was Drew that got pinned because of CM Punk. So now he's mad at CM Punk, and he's coming up to CM Punk and telling him to his face, no, you talk about actions have consequences when you talk about the stuff with Drew? Guess what? You fucked me over too. Actions have consequences applies to you too, nigga. And that's my big deal. Actions have consequences applies to all three of these people. It applies to CM Punk, it applies to Rhea Ripley, and it applies to Damian Priest. Exactly the same way that it applies to the people that they are or will soon have a problem with. If it doesn't, then they can't actually be babyfaces, or babyface versus heel doesn't mean a damn thing. And if babyface versus heel doesn't mean a damn thing, look what the fuck is happening with AEW. Y'all don't want to imitate that example. But that's the last. But I'm not going to even try to talk about AEW right now that much because that's not even the point. I just said that as an example. Point is, Seth Rollins is looking like the truest babyface in all of WWE because he's the one who's laying accountability to these storylines. Not so much to Rhea Ripley because he doesn't interact with her, but he's the one who Priest is like actually trying to show some honor with and throwing out an agreement that was tainted by a bad outcome. And he's the one laying out that Punk is responsible for his actions too, is responsible for the fact that Seth hates him too. So now it's like, okay, you've literally made my case for me in the form of Seth Rollins. Punk can't win. Drew has to freaking somehow bait Seth into inadvertently helping him to beat Punk. And we all know why Rhea can't win. Everything that she's done to both her control of Dominic and of Judgment, her control of Dominic, her domination of Judgment Day, and her and the history of malice of everything that she's done to Liv has to be paid back through this one humiliation that starts here at SummerSlam, with Dominic betraying her and Liv beating her. It has to start here. Priest, who's the one dude that's still loyal to Rhea and not in it for a different agenda, has to be taken out too, but not by Gunther. As a matter of fact, if he's so mad about his own team helping him out, that's what should happen again. Finn Bálor should actually help Priest retain the championship and then betray him on Raw in order to get a title shot. Either for himself or for another person who I think is going to be involved in this, or could potentially be involved in this. I hope he is. And that's the other part of the Finn Bálor Liv Morgan partnership from 2022 that everybody's saying that this ties back into how they're colluding and conspiring together here today. AJ Styles, the best wrestler in the world. I will go back to calling him that now because he's proven in 2024 that he can easily take that mantle back any fucking time. The matches with Cody Rhodes, especially the second one, the match with Marufuji over in Pro Wrestling Noah, AJ Styles has beaten the washed rumors. And he's back to a heel role, which I think he actually works best in terms of actually showing determination and a chip on his shoulder and actual purpose as a man in WWE. Really, ever since 2014 when he was in New Japan with the Bullet Club. His best work, in my humble opinion, has been as a bad guy, has been as a heel. So that's where, and now that he's back to that, and he's back to being top notch in the ring when he needs to be, AJ is, and his character has now straight up gone down the road of being obsessed with becoming a world champion again. So that fits perfectly into the agenda too, because here's why. Finn is currently one of the tag team champions with his boy Jordan Devlin McDonough. Yes, I'm going with the canon kayfabe logic that Jordan Devlin is still his name, and that's what JD stands for. But point is, the tag team title run with Bálor and McDonough is a thing. So who's going to be carrying the world championship for the Judgment Day? Is Finn going to try to be a double champion? Maybe. Or maybe it would make more sense for him to actually re-extend the offer, him and Liv, to re-extend the offer of team up back to AJ. Because again, he tried to get AJ to team with him and join the Judgment Day with him, but AJ wasn't having it because he felt like they had crossed the line and he was in his moral era and shit. And that led the OC to coming back when Finn tried to be too aggressive with the recruiting, and that led to the OC versus Judgment Day feud. But here's the thing. Ever since AJ's issues with LA Knight, now both him and the OC all ended up turning heel, even though Anderson and Gallows are more so tweeners on NXT, whereas he's a straight heel on the main roster. So it doesn't even take him actually betraying his old crew to go back to go back to Finn's offer and actually join the Judgment Day. In fact, the OC would actually be a good way to help with that, because AJ is currently a SmackDown guy. In order for him to go to Raw and fight for the world title, you got to do some shenanigans. You got to actually do something to attack Priest unprovoked, unannounced, and then basically finagle your way into an offer that gets you to fight Priest for the world title, and you end up going to Raw if you win. You got to run it like that. And in order for Finn to stay on side with Priest, he has, and in fact, Priest, he has to pretend to have an objection to this shit in order to set up a match. And this is where you use the OC to throw the match for AJ without letting it be known that you threw the match. Now, it would still piss Priest off, but to me, I need Dominic and Liv's betrayal, and here's the rich part that you can do. Have the Judgment Day kick out Dominic and Liv, supposedly. That would be where this goes. Dominic and Liv betray Rhea, get quote-unquote kicked out of the Judgment Day, all the while, and at the same time, Finn Bálor basically positions AJ Styles as the number one, helps AJ Styles position himself as the number one contender, while still pretending to be with Priest and with Rhea and against the fucking bullshit that Liv has never been doing. Once you set up a title match with AJ, that's when you can pull off the ultimate betrayal and cost Priest the chip. Get AJ that final world title run that his whole heel run has been looking for. That he's been obsessively looking for since he returned to being a heel. Get him and AJ, get the three of them to be teamed back up together. AJ, Finn, and Liv. Do the whole remodeling the Judgment Day with the Terror Twins out thing. And if you want to disband the Judgment Day after like several months of this, sure, go ahead. But at the very least, do this. Don't just break up the group immediately. That's not the right way to go. And nor is Rhea winning. Nor is Punk winning if you want to go back to his story. Actually, this is basically where I want to go with this. Drew McIntyre, Liv Morgan, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Bálor, AJ Styles, the entire Judgment Day, not counting Drew as a member of the Judgment Day, but he was an ally at Survivor Series, needs to be doing CM Punk, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley filthy. It starts tonight at SummerSlam. Rhea needs to be betrayed by Dominic. Punk needs to be screwed by Drew manipulating Seth, and Priest needs to be helped one last time by Finn against Gunther. And let the dominoes fall from there, leading all the way into the Bash in Berlin. Let the dominoes fall from there and lead to Berlin. So over this next month of August 2024, what needs to be happening in WWE, it needs to be the time that Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest, and CM Punk are all being done absolutely filthy. Drew McIntyre needs to have gotten a couple pieces over on Punk, and Finn and Liv need to have established that Priest and Rhea are out of the Judgment Day. And their co-op is taking the group over. That starts tonight. That starts at SummerSlam. This is how it has to be done. And that, the rebound from that, is what's going to lead to Punk and Priest and Ripley being the better people, character-wise, in their storylines. And that's when they become the true baby faces. And that is when it will be, that's when it'll be I'm not even going to say acceptable. That's when it's going to be the most appropriate direction to take to want to see them win. They have to eat the losses that force them to be better and or allow their enemies to be worse. That's what it's going to take for them to be the good guys and to deserve their victories. So they cannot get their way at SummerSlam. Priest has to be forced to accept another dirty win, and Rhea and Punk cannot win. That's how much importance SummerSlam has to influence the future of Monday Night Raw. That's all I got. I don't need to run on. I've already taken an hour. I don't need to run on anymore. This is all I got. Stay gold, y'all.